James Comey indicted for, quote, willingly and knowingly making a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement to Congress on September 3rd, 2020. Now, this is widely believed to be the moment in question.
Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
Now, Comey's statement is alleged to contradict statements that McCabe made to the Inspector General, which seem to suggest that Comey had authorized the disclosure in a meeting after that Wall Street Journal story was published. Now, amid these accusations, Comey claims, I'm innocent, so let's have a trial. And this indictment comes as we expect Jim Comey to surrender to federal authorities. We thought that would happen yesterday. We'll let you know when it does. And let's bring in Fox News contributor and former Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weissenberg. Saul, I'm looking at this indictment and I'm looking at the law as laid out, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. And there are a few elements here. Comey has to knowingly and willingly make this statement. It had to have been intentional. It has to be material to the investigation and the workings of Congress. What has to happen here, and how strong do you think this indictment is?
I don't think it's very strong. In any case like this, of course, we know very little. The defense is going to file a bill of particulars asking for more detail, and we'll get more detail from the government. But even in the best of circumstances, these cases are difficult precisely for the reasons you stated when you set out the elements. You have to show not that he was mistaken, but that he intentionally set out to deceive when he was testifying under oath. So they're always difficult. Now, if we don't know for sure who person 3 is in the indictment, but if it's Andrew McCabe, as everybody suspects, you're going to have a person who has terrible credibility. The Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, believed Comey in general over McCabe. He filed a criminal referral on McCabe that was solely based on alleged perjured testimony. So, a one-on-one battle over who said what when one of those people is Andrew McCabe is not good for the prosecution, unless there's some evidence out there that John Durham didn't find some email or something that sheds new light on the case. It's going to be tough. And by the way, virtually everybody I talk to, very conservative people, veterans of the criminal justice system on both sides, like I am, believe it will be very tough.
Yeah, and to your point, there's a lot we don't know. Who is person 1, 2, and 3? ABC having some reporting. Daniel Richman may be one of them. So we'll see the facts as they're laid out. I don't think so. Maybe not.
I don't think it's Richman.
It could. Yeah. ABC reporting could be wrong. But look, so I do want to ask you about this, just because there's been a lot said about weaponization of the DOJ, a lot of focus on President Trump. And I just want to remind viewers, because there's this nugget in the New York Times. I've thought about it for many, many years, and it's very interesting to me. And I want to pull it up, and it's about Biden's DOJ. I think a lot of our viewers will not have seen this yet. It says this, but Biden does have opinions about these investigations. In the past, Mr. Biden privately told his close circle of advisors, Mr. Trump posed a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted for his role in the events of January 6, according to 2 people familiar with his comments. Listen to this. Biden also told confidants he wanted Attorney General Merrick Garland to stop acting like a ponderous judge and to take decisive action. This is a serious reporter. This is Katie Rogers. Biden did have opinions on the prosecution. He was tired of Merrick Garland not prosecuting Trump. So there was some weaponization there in Biden's DOJ that just went unnoticed by the media.
Well, I think some people in the media noticed it, but you make a clear point. It's a big difference between people like former President Biden and President Trump. You have no doubt where President Trump stands. He comes right out and says it. Biden didn't do anything different. He just did it with private conversations that he intended to have leaked to the press, and it was leaked to the press. And it was after that was done that Garland started, springing into action. So there is no question, no doubt that there was weaponization of DOJ with respect to Donald Trump in the Biden White House.
Yeah, you make a fantastic point. Having worked in Washington for a lot of years, knowing a lot of these players, these leaks don't happen by accident, and they get on the pages of the New York Times for a reason, usually to megaphone something to an individual, maybe the Attorney General. Saul Weissenberg, thank you very much.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.